Welcome to your deep dive. Looks like we're diving into China today. Tons of material here, a big chunk of the Wikipedia page even.
Oh, yeah.
You've been doing your research. So, ready to tackle this massive, complex country?
Definitely a fascinating one to tackle.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll get through all the historical twists and turns, all the economic loops and bounds, cultural nuances, you name it. Won't be a boring history lecture.
No, we'll hit the highlights, connect the dots, hopefully spark some more curiosity along the way.
Yeah. Consider it a crash course in all things China, ancient dynasties to, well, today's role on the world stage.
Right, let's dive right in. When we talk about China, we're talking about a place that's been around for, well, forever. Ancient civilizations, dynasties popping up in the Yellow River Basin, like before 2000 BCE.
Yeah, one of the world's cradles of civilization.
Yeah.
And that ancient history, it really echoes through China's culture and identity even today.
And speaking of those echoes, let's talk about the Han Dynasty. Ruled for centuries, 206 BCE to 220 CE. I was reading, they actually gave their name to the modern Han Chinese ethnicity. That's pretty incredible.
It is.
Like, what a legacy.
And their influence goes way beyond just a name, They were huge players even back then.
Oh, really?
Huge. Think military campaigns stretching all the way to Central Asia.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped establish the Silk Road, one of the first great examples of globalization, cultural exchange.
Oh, for sure.
Connecting East and West for centuries, brought so much more than just goods to China.
Exactly. Ideas, religions, technologies. It was a pipeline.
Wow.
And it's a good reminder that, China has a long history of global engagement, even though they have had some periods of isolation too.
That's fascinating. So you see these periods of expansion, connection, and then sometimes a retreat. Does that pattern continue throughout China's history?
Absolutely. And it's key to understanding how modern China operates today. Take the Qing dynasty. They were the last imperial dynasty. Ruling from 1644 to 1912, added vast territories to China, saw a huge population growth, and even had what's been called a commercial revolution.
It sounds like a golden age almost. Was there a downside to all this success?
Well, some historians argue that the Qing government, as powerful as it was, had policies that kind of prioritized agriculture over everything else and actually clamped down on commerce.
That seems counterintuitive. Why would they do that during a time of, economic growth?
It's complex, but some scholars think that those policies might have ultimately contributed to some social and technological stagnation in China.
Interesting. It's a good reminder that even during periods of prosperity, there can be those underlying issues that, shape the future. Makes you wonder how different things might have been if the Qing dynasty had taken a different approach.
It's a question historians still debate today, and it highlights that pattern, right?
Yeah.
Periods of openness and connection followed by periods of isolation, maybe missed opportunities.
So the Qing dynasty falls in the early 20th century, and that's where things get really tumultuous, right?
It is. Beginning of a period of immense change and upheaval as China transitions into the modern world.
Revolutions.
Revolutions, civil war, the rise of communism.
Yeah, let's break that down a bit. We've got the 1911 revolution, right, which overthrew the Qing dynasty, ended thousands of years of imperial rule. Then the Chinese Civil War erupts.
Communists versus the nationalists.
Exactly.
And in 1949, after decades of struggle, the communists, led by Mao Zedong, come out on top. Establish the People's Republic of China.
Huge turning point.
Absolutely. Shapes everything that comes after.
And I have to admit, I've always been a little confused about the Great Leap Forward. It was supposed to be this massive effort to modernize and industrialize, but it ended in disaster, right?
Unfortunately, yes. Hugely ambitious program, but the execution was flawed. Led to widespread famine, millions of deaths. It's a tragic example of even the best intentions can go terribly wrong.
Especially when you're dealing with a population as large as China's. And then just a few years later, you have the Cultural Revolution, which, from what I've read, was a period of intense social and political upheaval. What was the goal of that movement?
Mao launched it to kind of purge China of what he saw as, bourgeois and capitalist elements.
Oh, okay.
It was a time of great turmoil. Intellectuals, anyone deemed counter-revolutionary was persecuted.
So much change, so much turmoil. So it's like a truly difficult time.
Yeah.
Did any positive changes come out of this period?
It's a complex legacy. The Cultural Revolution undoubtedly caused immense suffering, but it also had a lasting impact on Chinese society. greater emphasis on education and healthcare, even though those systems were deeply disrupted during the revolution itself.
It's amazing how China managed to bounce back from such a tumultuous period. What happened after Mao Zedong's death in 1976?
There was a period of political maneuvering. Eventually, Deng Xiaoping came to power. And he's really the architect of modern China's economic miracle.
This is where we see that shift from a strict communist planned economy to a more market-oriented system,
No.
right?
Exactly. Deng Xiaoping recognized that China needed to open up to the world, embrace market forces if it wanted to grow and prosper, implemented a series of reforms that really unleashed China's economic potential.
I've heard about those special economic zones that were set up to attract foreign investment. Was that part of Deng Xiaoping's plan?
Yes. Key to jumpstarting China's economic engine.
Okay.
Offered tax breaks and other incentives to foreign companies willing to invest. And it worked. Foreign investment poured in, bringing with it new technologies, management expertise.
It's incredible to think how much China has changed in such a short period. Went from a struggling, isolated nation to an economic powerhouse in just a few decades. Makes you wonder what other surprises China has in store for the world.
That's a great question, and one we'll continue to explore as we go deeper into China's modern economy, its growing global influence, its complex social and political landscape.
Before we get into all that, I think it would be helpful to get a sense of China's physical presence in the world. It's vast, the third largest country in the world by area.
And incredibly diverse. You've got towering mountain ranges like the Himalayas, sprawling deserts like the Gobi, fertile river valleys like the Yangtze.
It's like a continent unto itself.
It is.
And that sheer size and diversity must present some unique challenges, right?
Absolutely. Think about the environmental issues China faces. Desertification is a constant threat, especially with the Gobi Desert expanding. And pollution, both air and water, has been a major concern in recent years.
And then there's climate change, which has the potential to impact China in a big way. I've read about those melting glaciers in the Himalayas, which could disrupt water supplies for millions of people.
It's a complex web of challenges, and finding solutions is critical, not just for China, but for the whole world. But it's not all doom and gloom. China has actually made some significant strides in recent years when it comes to addressing these issues.
Really? That's good to hear. I know there's been a lot of focus on China's pollution problems, so it's encouraging to hear that they're making progress. What kind of steps have they been taking?
Well, they've invested heavily in renewable energy sources, like solar and wind power. And they've implemented stricter regulations on industrial emissions, which has helped improve air quality in some major cities.
That's promising. Sounds like they're taking these challenges seriously. But with such a massive population and a rapidly growing economy, it must be a constant balancing act to manage growth and protect the environment.
It is a balancing act, and there's still a long way to go, but the fact that China is acknowledging these challenges and taking action is a positive sign.
Okay, so we've covered ancient China, the tumultuous 20th century. We've gotten a glimpse of the environmental challenges facing this vast and diverse country. Now let's talk about how this nation is governed.
China's political system is unique, to say the least. Officially, a socialist republic led by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP.
But it's often described as authoritarian, with the CCP holding a tight grip on power. How does that work in practice? What does this system actually look like?
Well, from what I've read, the CCP has influence at all levels of government, from the local villages to the national stage. It's a pretty intricate system.
It is, and you've got, various branches of government. There's the National People's Congress.
Oh, yeah, the NPC.
The NPC, exactly, which has thousands of members and is technically the highest organ of state power. But in reality, the CCP has significant control over its decisions.
So it's not quite the same as like a multi-party democracy where different voices, opinions have equal weight.
Exactly. It's a different system, different set of values and priorities. And it's one that's been both praised for its efficiency, but also criticized for its lack of political freedoms.
That's a really important point. We can't talk about China without acknowledging the concerns about human rights and political freedoms. What are some of the specific issues that stand out to you based on the research you've done? Censorship is a major one. China has one of the most sophisticated internet censorship systems in the world, which restricts access to information, limits freedom of expression online, and there have been crackdowns on protests and dissent, which raises concerns about freedom of assembly.
Right, and there's the situation in Xinjiang, where there have been reports of human rights abuses against the Uyghur Muslim minority.
It's a complex and sensitive issue, and one that's drawn international condemnation. It's a reminder that while China has made tremendous progress in many areas, there are still serious concerns about human rights and political freedoms.
Definitely something to keep in mind as we continue our deep dive into China, a country of contrasts, of triumphs and challenges. And speaking of triumphs, we can't ignore China's remarkable economic rise.
Absolutely not.
It's gone from a relatively poor agrarian society to the world's second largest economy in just a few decades. That's incredible.
Unprecedented in modern history.
Yeah.
And it all started with those economic reforms we talked about earlier, the ones Deng Xiaoping initiated back in the late 1970s. Those reforms unleashed China's economic potential by opening up to foreign investment and allowing private enterprise to flourish.
It's like they flipped a switch,
Right.
ignited this economic engine.
And they've been firing on all cylinders ever since. China embraced globalization, became the world's factory floor, producing everything from clothing and toys to electronics and cars, massive workforce, and they were able to leverage that to become a manufacturing powerhouse.
And it wasn't just about cheap labor, right? China also invested heavily in education, infrastructure, which helped create a skilled workforce, a modern economy. They built roads, railways, ports.
They even built the world's largest high-speed rail network. Imagine traveling from Beijing to Shanghai, a distance of over 800 miles, in under 5 hours.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Mind-blowing. And it's a testament to China's long-term vision and their commitment to modernization. But they didn't stop there, right? They also set their sights on becoming a global leader in technology and innovation.
Absolutely. China has made huge strides in fields like artificial intelligence, robotics, renewable energy. They've overtaken the U.S. in terms of the sheer number of patents filed, which shows their ambition to be at the forefront of technological advancement.
And I read that 3 of the world's 10 largest stock exchanges are in China.
Yeah,
That's a pretty clear indicator of their economic might.
it is. But it's important to note that China's rapid economic growth has also come with some challenges. Income inequality is a growing concern, widening gap between the rich and the poor.
Right.
And environmental issues, as we discussed earlier, remain a major challenge.
It's that balancing act again, trying to maintain economic growth while also addressing environmental concerns and social inequalities. It's a tough challenge for any country, especially for one as large and complex as China.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. But China's leaders are aware of these challenges, and they're trying to find ways to address them. Only time will tell how successful they'll be.
Well, we've explored China's ancient history, its political system, its economic miracle. We've even touched on some of the environmental and social challenges facing the country. But we can't talk about China without talking about its incredibly rich and vibrant culture.
Absolutely. China has a cultural legacy that spans thousands of years. It's a tapestry woven with art, literature, philosophy, religion, cuisine.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Chinese food is one of the most beloved cuisines in the world. And
What do
it's
you
so
say?
diverse. You've got Peking duck, dim sum, spicy Sichuan dishes, delicate Cantonese cuisine.
And it's not just about the food itself, it's about the whole dining experience. The social aspect of sharing a meal with family and friends, the symbolism and traditions associated with different dishes.
Speaking of traditions, what about those beautiful silk robes I see people wearing in photos? Is that a modern fashion trend or is there a deeper cultural significance?
Those are likely Hanfu, which is the traditional clothing of the Han Chinese. And yes, there's definitely a deeper significance. There's been a resurgence of interest in Hanfu in recent years, especially among young people. It's seen as a way of connecting with their cultural heritage, of expressing their identity.
It's fascinating how cultures evolve and adapt, yet still hold on to those threads of tradition. What about other aspects of Chinese culture? What else should we highlight?
Well, Chinese opera is a unique art form that's been around for centuries.
Oh, yeah.
The elaborate costumes, the stylized movements, the dramatic storytelling, it's a truly captivating performance.
I've always been fascinated by traditional Chinese music. Those instruments like the guzheng and the erhu, such a haunting, almost ethereal sound.
They evoke a
Fun.
sense of history and tradition, and there are so many other cultural treasures to explore. Think martial arts like kung fu and tai chi, calligraphy, tea ceremonies.
And let's not forget about the incredible architectural
Oh, of
marvels,
course.
like the Great Wall and the Forbidden City. China has 56 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, more than any other country in the world.
Wow.
I know, it's amazing.
These sites offer a glimpse into China's long and fascinating history, and they attract visitors from all over the globe. They're a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of the Chinese people throughout the ages.
It's amazing to think about the cultural legacy that China has contributed to the world. And that legacy continues to evolve today. China's film industry, for example, has been booming in recent years, with movies like Wolf Warrior 2 and The Wandering Earth breaking box office records.
Chinese cinema is definitely making its mark on the global stage. And social media platforms like WeChat and e-commerce giants like Alibaba have transformed the way people in China connect and consume.
It's a dynamic and ever-changing cultural landscape where ancient traditions coexist with modern innovations. It's almost overwhelming to think about all the facets of Chinese culture we've touched on.
It is a lot to absorb, but that's the beauty of it. There's always more to discover, more to learn.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about China's history, its government, its economic rise, its environmental challenges, and its vibrant culture. What does it all mean? What's the takeaway for our listener?
I think the key takeaway is that China is a country of immense complexity. It's a place of contradictions, where ancient traditions meet modern ambitions, where economic power intersects with social challenges, where a tightly controlled political system coexists with a dynamic and entrepreneurial spirit.
It's a country that defies easy categorization, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. To understand China, we need to move beyond simple narratives and embrace the nuances. We need to be willing to learn, to question, and to engage with this complex and ever-changing nation.
Because whether we realize it or not, China's story is becoming increasingly intertwined with our own.
Its decisions and actions have global repercussions. Its economic might shapes global markets. Its cultural influence is felt worldwide. And its growing role on the world stage is something we can't ignore. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone from ancient dynasties and the Silk Road to, skyscrapers and global stock exchanges. What's the next chapter in China's story?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one that has global implications. China's choices, both domestically and on the world stage, will shape the 21st century in profound ways.
One of the things we keep coming back to is this idea of China balancing tradition and modernization. How do you see that tension playing out in the future?
It's a fascinating dynamic. You've got this, on the one hand, this deep-rooted sense of history and cultural identity, right?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, this relentless drive for progress and innovation. And those two forces are constantly interacting, sometimes clashing, sometimes complementing each other.
It's like China's trying to walk a tightrope between its past and its future.
And the whole world is watching to see how they navigate that. Will they be able to maintain economic growth while addressing social and environmental concerns? Will they become a more open and democratic society? Or will the Communist Party maintain its tight grip on power?
These are huge questions. And the answers, they'll have a ripple effect across the globe.
Think about the Belt and Road Initiative, for example.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's this massive global infrastructure project, aims to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa through a network of roads, railways, ports. It has the potential to reshape global trade and geopolitics.
It's a bold move, and one that's generated a lot of debate, right?
Yeah.
Some see it as a win-win, a way to boost economic development and connect countries. Others see it as a power play by China, a way to extend their influence, create dependencies.
It's complex, and it's still too early to say what the long-term impact will be, but it is a clear sign of China's global ambitions and its willingness to assert itself on the world stage.
It feels like we're at a pivotal moment in history. The world order is shifting, and China is playing a leading role in that shift.
And it's happening so fast, it's hard to keep up with the pace of change, both within China and globally. But one thing is clear. Understanding China is more important than ever before.
And I think that's a key takeaway for our listener. This deep dive has hopefully provided some insights into China's complexity, its history, its culture, its ambitions, but it's just a starting point.
There's so much more to learn, to explore, and the more we understand about China, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this increasingly interconnected world.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from ancient dynasties to the future of our world. It's a lot to process, but hopefully it sparks some curiosity and a desire to keep learning.
I think that's the best we can hope for, right? Inspire a sense of wonder and a thirst for knowledge. That's what deep dives are all about.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of China. We hope you'll join us again for another deep dive soon. Until then, keep exploring.